Well, hey, it's Matt Steen, co-founder of Chemistry Staffing. This is another chemistry conversation. And today I'm really excited because Rich Birch, the founder of Unseminary and the grand poobah of the blog and the podcast, and has written a ton of books that y'all should just go buy now. Let's be honest. Is going to join me.
Nice.
Going to have a great conversation. So, Rich, hey man, thanks for spending some time with me.
Matt, super excited to be here. Love you. Love what chemistry's up to. I think you guys provide such a great service to so many churches. Finding and developing great teams, just such a critical piece of the puzzle. So, and particularly the long haul thing. I love how you guys are focused on how do we get the right fit people who are going to stick and stay for a long time. So yeah, love. And when you said you wanted to chat, I'm like, absolutely. Let's jump on the call.
Well, fantastic. Now you see why. Now you see why I have Rich come do this, because you speak so well. So your check's in the mail. But anyhow. Rich, these are real simple conversations, and really it's just, just a handful of questions. I'm really curious. You are, you're talking with church leaders all the time. You're
Absolutely.
Looking at what's going on in the landscape, and you've got a slightly different perspective on this, just, being north of the border. What are you learning about the church right now?
Well, this is such a strange time, right? Like we're in this kind of like, at least late COVID period or post-COVID, post-pandemic, or somewhere in there, right? And it's a strange time in the life of the church. I think the thing that has been real, there's a number of things that are becoming very clear. For a long time during that season, it was like there was a lot of stuff that wasn't clear. We weren't really sure what way was up. But one of the things that's become really clear is, and it's on the challenge side, it's the area that churches are wrestling with, is there's been a significant degradation of the volunteer core in churches across the country. Time and again, when I'm talking with executive pastors particularly, but all different kinds of leaders in the local church, one of the things as we kind of come out of that phase is we realize, goodness, there has been a real kind of departure of people who are serving in the local church. And that's a real problem for our churches. It's some of it was created because of our shift to online, and that when we were in that period, even if it was a few weeks, even if it weren't for months on end, like some churches were, even if it was just for a little bit, there was people that got out of the rhythm of serving, and a bunch of those people haven't come back. We did a study of executive pastors across the country, and 3/4, I think it was 73%, said that they've seen a degradation of their volunteer core in the last year. And so this is a real issue. It's something we've got to continue to stare in. We've got to continue to look at. Developing teams is always tough. It's always hard. It doesn't just magically happen. It takes a lot of chemistry to do it. It takes a lot of work to make it happen. But in that environment, it's in the environment we're currently in, it's even more critical. I think it's one of those things we've got to keep staring at, figure out what we can do as churches to push forward.
Yeah. What do you think is causing that? Why do you think the drop off? I mean, it's easy to point to COVID and just kind of file it away. Do you think there's something else going on there?
Yeah, I think COVID was an inciting, and this is like the most stereotypical thing that keeps being said about COVID, but I think in some ways COVID was just accelerating what was already there. I think there are, frankly, very few church leaders who actually have experience at building teams. A lot of churches, church leaders, they show up at a church and they might be able to grow a team. Like they might be able to say, there's 100 people on this team. Now we're going to get it to 120 people on this team. But actually from there's no one on this team to how do we get people on this team? And then how do we, recruit those people? How do we re-engage them? How do we retain them? That's like more typically what like a church planter does. It's more typically in which not everybody plants churches. And so I think some of it is, it's like stretching a skill that we just don't have. We're just not used to it. And so some of it we have to rethink some of our assumptions. And then frankly, I think there was a lot of people who were volunteering who we were probably overtaxing them. We built systems that depended on too few people. And then when there was this kind of natural break that happened, they said, oh, I'm not going to go back. Even just in my own small group recently, I was talking to a guy that's in my small group, and he's like one of those volunteers that's like always at everything. Like he's like super dependable and like has been, just is like just the salt of the earth, amazing guy, tech volunteer. And he said, it's been kind of nice to not be on all the time,
Yeah.
because of, and that was it kind of during that, that COVID season. And so I think some of it's forcing us to think differently. We've got to think a lot more about retention. I think for years, I've been saying to church leaders, we should stop thinking about recruiting, stop just trying to fill the bucket, but actually think about it. It fits in with your thoughts on long-term staff. We should actually be thinking more about how do we keep people? How do we create a compelling volunteer experience? How do we ensure that those people are cared for, that they know exactly what to expect, that we get them a free t-shirt and we care for them and we sit down and actually love on them. So I think it in some ways now the difficulty is we have to actually do some recruiting in this season because we've got to build up our teams, but that'd be a few things.
So let me throw something out there to you and tell me I'm all crack if I am, it won't be the first time today.
Not at all.
One of the things I've been thinking, just kind of from my standpoint is I think we've systemed and processed ourselves to the point where we've forgotten some of what you just said as far as as far as sitting down with people and getting to know them and hearing their story and, not giving them a church job on top of their 40 hours a week. I had this conversation with somebody who was talking about, the lack of volunteers that are coming back. And I just asked them, I said, how many cups of coffee have you been having with people?
That's so true.
And just kind of blank stare, right?
Yep.
I think we've gotten to the point where we're used to almost creating volunteer mills. Is that unfair to say?
Yep. Yeah, no, I don't think you're way off. I think that's very true. I think, my wife is we always joke, she's like a people person. Like she just loves people, loves sitting across the table from folks. And there's a lot of leadership that can happen in that environment. I know for years at churches that I've led where we've had campus pastors, we have put in a part of their weekly rhythm is some number of face-to-face meetings with volunteers, and it's changed. It's different. It's some seasons it's 10, some seasons it's 5, but it's like, you've got to get on the mill of just getting out in front of people. And then I think the other piece of it, which you're kind of touching on, is we have to think backwards from what is in the volunteer experience for our volunteers. Like, how do we make it such a great experience for them that they're growing? And it goes beyond just asking the gifting question, kind of how has God gifted people? That's a critical piece, but that's like table stakes. That's like, we know that people have spiritual gifts. Of course we want to place people in their spiritual gifts, but it's that plus it's how do we develop them? How do we provide great kind of leadership development opportunities for them? How do we support them? What are we doing, to ensure that they're being cared for? Volunteering is super important. It's one of those areas, and I know you know this, but to reflect back to our listeners, it is one of the primary ways that we help people grow in their relationship with Jesus. It's a primary engine. For years, we've been talking about small groups, and I think that's good. I love small groups, but I do think that there was maybe a weird thing that happened in some churches where we talked groups, but then we just looked at volunteering as like, well, we just need all these people to do stuff. Right. And we looked at it like, we just need all these people to check a list. And we didn't see that as actually, no, that's a growth opportunity. Yeah. That's a way for people to grow in their relationship with Jesus, to exercise their gifts, to be the people that God's called them to be. We've kind of like ghettoized that just to groups and said, that's the only place that can happen. And I think we've got to rebalance that. And I think this is a good season to do that. Hey, how do we make our volunteer experience super compelling in this season?
That's awesome. I used to tell our teams all the time, look, if this is not an act of worship for you, if this isn't something that is life-giving and life-sustaining, then we need to find something else.
Right.
There is something there to use your gifts, but this can't be another job. I love the fact that you're reshaping that. And I don't know if you kind of feel this way too. I feel like for a season, we got to the point where it's like, hey, come in, be part of the church, get into a group, and serve on, whenever. I'm almost to the point where I'm kind of sharing with some of the churches I'm working with, hey, make the groups the second thing, get them in, get them plugged into a team and that kind of thing.
I think that's very true. And I think particularly there's a lot of church leaders who would say, we're trying to reach guys, we're trying to reach men, and struggle with that. And that's a common problem that lots of churches have. But but I've in those contexts, I've always said I think there's an untapped opportunity, particularly on the volunteering side. There is, not trying to be sexist, but there is something about guys will stand beside another guy and do something
Yep.
more likely, and actually maybe have some pretty significant conversation in
Oh,
that
yeah.
environment, less likely to then sit, and on a sofa across the, from someone else and have a kind of deep conversation. And so,
Yep.
so I think there's a great opportunity on the volunteering side, particularly to reach, guys, and that's not just guys, obviously women as well. But I do think if churches are worried about that is, that's one way to help people grow for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. So church coming back to saying, hey, what,
Yes.
we're struggling. We've got services. Sunday's always coming, and
Yep.
I've got nobody. What is one thing that they can do, tomorrow?
Yeah, great question. So for years I was involved in launching multi-site campuses, and so just giving some context, we directly launched 13 locations and have coached a ton of churches around that. And there's a piece of that puzzle that I think really all churches could be kind of taking that a tactic that we used in those environments and applying it. For years we did what we called them connection events. What they are was an opportunity for people to connect spiritually now, or to connect relationally. So this would be like we're going into a new community, and we would say, oh, we're going to do in this Northeast. So I know, realize this doesn't happen in Florida, but we'd be like, oh, we're going to do a skating night, and we'd like rent out a rink and get everybody together. And it's 80% hanging out. It's about getting people to connect and talk with each other. And then it's 20% what we're doing as a new location.
Yeah.
I think this is a season that our churches should be looking at similar tactics. We should be asking the question, how are we building people relationally? One of the things that we know that people are looking for, what they're trying to get out of volunteer experience, is actually social connections. They're looking for people to connect with. They want to know people. And so rather than just saying, hey, can you show up and serve in this thing? Let's put another tactic in there, which is like, let's do something fun together. Let's engage. And again, the goal is it's not an information meeting. It's not an interest meeting. We're getting together to talk. It's an opportunity to connect with each other. And so I've been talking with churches across the country that have been doing this and seeing huge returns on it, seeing like, yeah, wow, like we had 100 people show up to that, and wouldn't you know, like we tracked it, and 84 of those people now said they'll be on a volunteer team. Well, shocker, because they know people, they have relationships with folks.
Yeah.
And so again, that's something I would be encouraging people in this season to be thinking about. Okay, what can we be doing relationally to get people to connected? And that's even more so like again, so great. We're seeing across the country, stuff opening up, and it's like, we're going to have concerts again, and like all that stuff's going to happen again. But we've had a protracted time of people not connecting socially, right? It's been like dangerous for your health or illegal to like connect with other people. And so we need to almost like midwife that experience. We need to help people create environments where they'll connect with each other and build relationship. And as the precursor to saying, hey, will you join a team? Will you jump in on what we're doing?
That's awesome, man. Rich, thank you so much for spending some time and sharing your wisdom with our crowd. If you haven't gone and bought all Rich's books yet, you really need to, like I said, but definitely go check out unseminary.com, check out the podcast. It's gold. It really is leadership gold. You need to
appreciate that.
So.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you. Appreciate what you're doing. Again, cheering for you. I love what you're up to, and I appreciate you even helping people through this thing. It's so good.
Amen. Thanks, Rich.